If you care about the future of vulnerable children, children's rights, or if you are an attorney interested in child welfare work, this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Hello, I'm Angela Kane, Chief Communications Officer for Child Advocates, and I will be interviewing one of our award-winning attorneys who will share details about our groundbreaking legal service in Indiana that she leads. She is the director of Child Advocates' Direct Representation Program. It is the only program in Indiana that offers free in-house attorneys to represent the rights of older children in the child welfare system in court, children ages 10 and above. They are children who have faced abuse or neglect in their home. But while their abuser has the right to have an attorney, Indiana is one of only 5 states that does not ensure that children in the child welfare system have an attorney too. At the heart of Child Advocates' mission, we seek justice, opportunity, and well-being for foster children. And you will hear one teen's life-changing transformation that is building him a better future because of our direct representation program. Want to be inspired and enlightened? Hear more from Rachel Volinsky, the attorney who helped launch our innovative direct representation program. Rachel, first, I just want to let people know about the caliber of attorney you are and how lucky we are to have you join us at Child Advocates to launch our direct representation program. That was in 2021. Now, before joining Child Advocates, you worked for the Marion County Public Defender Agency, where you represented children in juvenile delinquency cases. And in that role, you won Indiana's highest award for juvenile defenders attorneys, that is, the GALT Award. So you were making waves before Child Advocates ever even hired you. That award is named after a landmark Supreme Court decision. So tell us first more about the GALT Award and what that meant for you to get it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So my passion since going to law school has been working with children in the child welfare system, but more initially, it was in the juvenile justice system. And the GALT Award is named after somebody named Gerald Galt from a Supreme Court decision about 60 years ago. This young man was sentenced to what is essentially 6 years in a juvenile detention center or juvenile prison-like facility for a alleged prank phone call to his neighbor. And he had no attorney. He had no evidence presented against him. It was kind of just probation said, well, we got this report. And the judge was like, that's bad. His parents weren't even at the hearing. And because of that terrible decision that happened at the trial level, the Supreme Court eventually heard the case and said, absolutely not. Juveniles in any kind of delinquency case where their liberty may be impacted by being taken from their parents, from their home, and put in a locked facility. In those cases, they have to have a lawyer. They have to have a defense attorney, whether it be a private attorney or a public defender. And of course, in our state, for the most part, it's public defenders. So, doing that work for about 12 years, certainly understanding that, Gerald Galt needed a lawyer, but not just any lawyer, right? Like children deserve and need good lawyers, not just somebody sitting next to them in the courtroom saying, nah, Your Honor, Jerry's made some bad decisions and whatever you think is best. Like, absolutely not. But getting to know your client and getting to know their strengths and how they can be successful and putting together a good plan for them to be successful in the community. Those are the things that I did as a juvenile defense attorney. And that was why that award was meaningful to me, because I really worked hard to do that and to work with children to prevent them from being waived to the adult system. And with all of that, it was really meaningful work. So I very much appreciated being recognized for it.
Well, let's talk about what made you come to us and become this rock star attorney that we've enjoyed. You've won several awards, et cetera, over the years in your work. But what made you decide to come to Child Advocates and leave the public defender work for child welfare work?
Right. That was such a hard decision. And I remember, crying on the phone with my former supervisor when making that decision. But, I felt what I guess you would call is a calling. I don't think it's a religious calling, but absolutely it's maybe a faith calling to help those in need, to heal the world, to do good now on earth, to help people. And I saw that, at least my clients in the delinquency system, when they were placed in locked facilities, they all had lawyers because of that case and because of the Galt case. But in the child welfare system, children were regularly removed from their families and they were placed in locked facilities in the same rooms, the same residentials, the same literal cells that my delinquency kids were being placed in. And the child welfare kids do not have lawyers. In Indiana, overwhelmingly, foster children are not appointed attorneys, even when they go to these very restrictive, locked residential facilities. So they really have very little communication with the outside world. We just saw recently on the news that multiple youth are suing a facility for all kinds of mistreatment. We've had facilities in the last 5 years shut down in Indiana because of mistreatment. And we put kids there without providing them lawyers from the foster care system. And I just felt that was so wrong. I still feel it is such a disservice to all of us. It just felt so wrong to me. And I just wanted to try to fix it. And through, fixing it, it's been representing many children in the foster care system and preventing a lot of children from going to residential.
Talk about what makes us unique, in particular child advocates, because they brought you in to start this direct representation program. How are we different than others across the state, in particular, when it comes to Counsel for Children, which is at the heart of this?
Well, there's not really others across the state, so that makes us unique right there. Certainly, local counties have the ability to appoint attorneys to children in the foster care system, right? And so there are a couple counties that will appoint public defenders to represent the children, and some of those people are very well trained and do excellent work. And some of the public defenders have probably never represented a child before or are just, kind of learning. And I think our agency, our nonprofit is different because we are all specifically trained. This is all that we do. We understand trauma. We understand how to speak with youth. We understand what it's like to be client-centered, even with children. And we see a lot, sometimes courts will appoint an attorney, but they're appointing a guardian ad litem attorney, which is really just yet another person in the courtroom arguing for what that individual person believes is in the child's best interests. But children want to be like their voice to be heard, what they want. I mean, they are the person most impacted by these proceedings. They're the ones whose liberty is most infringed upon in these proceedings. So what they think is in their best interest or what they want should be presented through a lawyer, because this is a legal case. Yet it tends to be a lot of other people in the proceeding all coming in and taking their own individual experiences and biases, and they're saying, well, this is what I think is best. And we always talk about, well, we're going to do what's in the best interest of the child. Well, what happens when you've got 4 people coming to court and they all say that there's a different outcome that would be in the best interest of the child? And that happens a lot. And still, even when there's all those 4 different outcomes, if the child doesn't have their own legal representative to make their legal case, you're missing the most important parties, position on what is in their best interest. And we have 92 different counties, so there's 92 different ways of doing things. But overall, the majority of foster children do not have expressed interest or child-directed attorneys in Indiana.
I know this is not an easy question to answer, but why do you think it is so? I mean, we're one of 5 states that doesn't offer that? Talk more about why you think that's so.
Right. So recently, well, I guess, slowly over the last 20 or 30 years, states have started implementing laws that require foster children to have lawyers. And there's different models. Sometimes those lawyers are guardian ad litem attorneys. Sometimes they're client-directed attorneys like what we do. Sometimes they're both. If the younger kids might have a guardian ad litem attorney, and then once they hit the age of 10, they get a child-directed attorney. Indiana, I have no idea why. We are a conservative state, but almost every other conservative state has attorneys for children. So it's not that. We do provide DCS, the Department of Child Services, a substantial amount of money. So we're certainly trying to fund child welfare in our state. So I guess overall, the main reason is money, right? It will cost maybe $10 million a year for all children to have lawyers, but certainly we could limit that to at least children going to residential. And the other reason is historically, there have been some groups who have been opposed. Sometimes it seems like people see it as a pie, and if we give money to attorneys for children, then that will take away part of their piece of the pie. Or some people think that if attorneys are arguing for what the child wants, then the best interest perspective will be, I don't know, muted or not as strong. At the end of the day, the judge is there to make the best decision, but hearing from all perspectives is all in our judicial system. Since the beginning of our judicial system, that is the blueprint of it, right? If the judge hears all of the different perspectives, that's how we get a good outcome. And so we're just asking kind of to follow that. Let's hear all the different perspectives and allow the judge to do the judge's job. And at the end of the day, what the Supreme Court noted in the In re Galt decision was that once a party feels heard, even if they don't agree with the outcome, they are far more likely to buy into the outcome and feel like the process was fair just because they were heard. That's called procedural justice.
I know one of the things that you said in particular about this when we were talking about this program in the past is this really resonates with me. The child's alleged abuser has a right to an attorney, but the child has no one. And that is amazing to me when I hear that, when I think about what our direct representation does for children. Talk about some of the biggest needs that these children have and what age children we serve all the way until, their adulthood. But what are some of the main things that they need from you as an attorney?
Number one, they want to know what's going on in their case. Nobody else is telling them. And I know that adults want to protect children, but not allowing them to be part of the proceeding is not protecting them. It is just isolating them and making them feel like they have no control. So I'd say the greatest needs that we see are families, foster families. We take these youth and children away from their biological parents. Sometimes they want to be taken away, sometimes they don't. Then we have no place to put them in the system. The DCS case managers and attorneys regularly say we just can't find placements for older youth. And, it's pretty upsetting. Their main job is to provide temporary housing for children who cannot live safely with their parents, to identify who that is and then provide them temporary housing. That is what we pay them for. And there's a whole group of youth, older youth. So we're talking teenagers, so 12, 13 and up, who they do not have enough housing for. And so we remove children from their homes and then have no good place to put them. It's terrible. It's absolutely devastating right now. And then when we do put them in, residentials, their needs are often neglected. I mean, medical needs, dental needs, emotional needs, safety, just like being safe, educational needs, just extremely neglected.
What is the impact when you see an attorney standing up for their rights? What does that do? And if you think about it, share a story of where you've seen impact. And I mean, there are probably several of them, but first, how many children do we serve most often, or have we served even in the last year?
At any one time, we are serving around 200 youth. So throughout the year, it's like 250 or more youth every year that we're serving. And now that we've been doing this a couple years, that adds up. So it's pretty cool now that we have 5 full-time attorneys doing this work.
That's still a load of work when you hear 5 full-time attorneys. If only we could just grow this and continue to grow this. That's at least a prayer. And so can you share at least one youth story, which is what I was talking about, of impact by having someone like you, and you are a firecracker. You will fight, fight, fight. I know that about you, Rachel. To have someone like you standing in their corner, what impact has that had on them?
Well, so overall, we do provide surveys to our clients to voluntarily fill it out if they want. And they say, like, she listened to me. Most of us are female, so most of the time the comments are about a female. But listened to me and actually like asked me what I wanted. She was the first person to really talk with me, tell me what was going on. So I think that in and of itself is an impact that, you can't like measure that. The case didn't end differently because of that, probably. But that's why we do the work. But the big impacts are also really cool. So every time we prevent a youth from going to a locked residential and then see, 3-6 months later, them being able to transition out of the child welfare system, that's pretty amazing. So, because this one's going to stick with me for a while.
Oh.
There's a client who was placed in a residential facility when he was 10 years old. And his family had a lot of issues, criminal issues, lots of addiction, not responsible, a lot of issues, right? And he himself is very, he had a lot of diagnoses, and he, educationally was never going to be able to graduate from high school. So he was placed in this facility at age 10, and I got on the case when he was age 17 or 18, just around when he was turning 18. He had been in the facility that whole time. For 8 years, he was raised in a locked facility. We're talking about older youth. Like, there's no choice to, walk around to a certain place or go meet a friend or go to a movie or go to the coffee shop, or there's no real choices that other teenagers are getting to make. So he'd been in this facility, and at some point he had been having contact with his grandma, but for some reason the Department of Child Services said that contact was unhealthy because his grandma would talk about how when he comes home, they can do X, Y, and Z. Like, just happy things, but they thought it was unhealthy for her to be talking about when he comes home, because the plan wasn't for him to go home with her. The plan was for him to go to a BEADS group home, which is the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities. So basically to be in a group home for people with mental disorders for the rest of his life instead of with family. And yet he had family, a grandma and a dad who had been sober at that point for a couple years, who wanted him. And so we started, pushing back and saying, okay, just because grandma says, I want you home, or I love you when you come home, like those are just loving things. Has anyone tried to tell her not to say that, right? And so we start to get some visits set up, and these are supervised visits. And the supervisor says they are just so loving. And grandma would just love on him, and he would love on grandma. So we start to like push more. Grandma's very consistent. So we say, okay, well, can't grandma take him out? So finally we get it so grandma can take him to the store, take him out to eat. Those go well. So then we get it so grandma can take him home for a couple hours. And he lives an hour away, more than an hour away. So, and then you got to think, this is 8 years that he has not been in a home of any kind. 8
That's heartbreaking.
Left in this residential. And, we take kids away and we say, well, we'll find them a foster home. But you can't. You can't find them a foster home. And then you stop trying to reunite them with their family. So we finally push. We get them home for some long weekends. There's like a hiccup here or there. But about a month or two ago, we finally got it so that the court and DCS got on board and granted him to go home with his grandma full-time forever. He was 19 at that point. And now his grandma is his legal guardian, and he can be cared for through her, by her, even though he's 18. And he just wants to live there. He's probably not going to be able to work. He's not going to be able to go to more school, but she buys him video games, and they have just this beautiful relationship. She is able to keep him safe. And their relationship, like her saying, I can't wait till you come home, and knowing that kid spent his whole life that he can remember in a locked residential. And then a year, me on the case with my intern for 1 year, able to get him home. It's beautiful. It's infuriating that no one else pushed, no one else did this. It's scary. All the children most children do not have lawyers. Right now, he has a loving family who is able to take care of him. So that's been a really big success.
Wow. I had to get off camera there for a second and wipe my That's touching. That is at the heart of the work that you guys do and that all of us are child advocates for, to see those types of outcomes that can literally change a child's life. And that's
Oh,
just one of
literally.
many. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I
I
mean,
didn't
literally,
interrupt
like
you.
it's,
Mhm.
I really trying hard to not to be like, I changed this kid's life. But there's a couple cases where it's like, no. And I shouldn't say the judge appointed us. The judge in that case has really been making efforts to try to get youth who are in residential attorneys. She sees the need and the
Right.
benefit. So she made the decision to appoint us. And then we just did our work. But her appointment 100% changed his life. Like there's no reasonable argument whatsoever to the contrary. Her decision to appoint us changed his life. And it's just, I wish, maybe I'll get a picture of them, but him and his grandma, um, he's just so sweet, and he hugs me and he goes to hug the judges. He's just
I
this
love
sweet
this.
kid. It's just this beautiful relationship. I'm just so happy that we were able to do that for them.
It just shows that when kids are given a chance, when they're given the support that they need, it can literally be, as we said earlier, life changing. And a lot of people may not realize, I'll let you talk about this if you could, that the goal is what when a child is put into the child welfare system? Because sometimes they're coming from homes where there's been substance abuse, there's been neglect, all the things that can happen. And some people may think that they can never get back to home. But what does it take? What is the goal of the child welfare system when it comes to having a child in the system and what their ultimate goal is for each of them, if it can happen? And what does it
Yeah.
take?
In almost every single child welfare case, the goal is always reunification. And that's not for no reason, right? That is because study after study has shown that reunification with parents, as long as parents, have remedied the issues that brought the child into the child welfare
Yeah.
system, is in the child's best interest. All children have much better outcomes. The trauma of adoption is real, right? And it doesn't mean I'm not saying that the adoptive parents are bad or mean or neglectful or anything like that. It's just the very fact that your parents could not take care of you to a point that you had to be adopted by someone else. That fact in and of itself can be very traumatic for children. So, um, you know, in pretty much every single case, we want to push for reunification. Now, well, I shouldn't say we want to do what our client wants us to do, but the system 100% is set up or supposed to be set up for reunification.
Now, those who are not familiar with the system might think, how can they go back into a home that had abuse, neglect, et cetera? There's actual help for families and work to get them to recover, to change their ways, correct?
Yes. So ideally, DCS is able to put in services, and certainly there are many, many great
DCS
services
being the
out
Department
there.
of Child
Yep,
Services. I just
Department
wanted
of
to
Child
be.
Services. Yep. They put in therapy and family therapy. They put in case management for the parents so that they can help them get a job. Most cases are just neglect, which I shouldn't say just neglect. Neglect can be very harmful to children, but most of the cases are not a parent actively trying to abuse a child. Most are, unfortunately, symptoms of being in a world where parents are not able to get the social services that they need, or they lost a job, or they have addiction, which is, terrible. That's addiction is just, those are the saddest cases. But yes, there is really good help. But when the system doesn't work as well as it should, all the idealism is gone, and the reality is we don't have foster homes for older kids, and we don't have providers who can immediately jump on cases.
Well, if you haven't said it already, what is the age range when someone can be a part of our direct representation program for kids?
So we represent children as young as 10. In very rare situations, we could represent somebody younger, or with a court appointment. In rare situations, we would represent younger as well. But we want to make sure that the youth understands, we work for them. We're their legal attorney. We're going to argue for what they want. And anything they tell us is confidential. So we just want to make sure they understand some of the basics of an attorney-client relationship.
Every day, our attorneys fight for children's rights, a right to have a choice in determining their future, and a right to have a safe and loving home. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. There are many more children who need our legal services and other programs year-round. Help us change children's lives. Be a Child Advocates champion today. Give to support our work. Go to childadvocates.net and click on our Give tab, or scan the link here.